out Peter and asks, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" Peter responds, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." So Jesus says, "Feed my lambs." Then he asks the question again, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter says again, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." So Jesus says, "Tend my sheep." And then Jesus asks a third time, "Do you love me?" And Peter responds, "Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you." Jesus says, "Feed my sheep." And in that little exchange between Peter and Jesus, we find everything we need to know about what it means to be a follower of Jesus. We need to remember that Jesus asked, "Do you love me?" Not, "Did you remain faithful? Did you deny me? Did you run away?" I find this wonderfully encouraging. He doesn't criticize him for his failure. He asks only one question: "Do you love me?" I find this deeply encouraging because I too often have failed Jesus, more often than I can remember. So have you. If Jesus wants to air our sins in public, we would be terribly embarrassed. If Jesus demands a clean and pure life from us, we will be hopelessly lost. But Jesus doesn't ask, "What have you done?" He doesn't ask, "Have you been good?" He doesn't ask for a list of accomplishments. He simply asks, "Do you love me?" That is reassuring because I'm pretty sure I can do that. I can love Jesus. I am not sure how well I can do everything else, but I can love Jesus. And if that's the only test that I have to pass, I think I can pass it. And so can you. You can pass the test too, because you, all of us, can love Jesus. If Jesus required us to be truly holy, or to read the Bible every day, or never to have an impure thought, or never to have violated the commandments, if Jesus required those things, we would all be desperately, terribly, deeply lost. But Jesus asks only, "Do you love me?" We can do that. When Peter answers that he loves Jesus, Jesus says, "Feed my lambs." Now, lambs are baby sheep that aren't fully grown yet, sheep that need special care and feeding, sheep that need someone to teach them how to grow up right. Lambs need someone to keep them from running out in front of a car. If we love Jesus, we will do what we can to feed his lambs. We will do what we can to love and protect and feed and teach those in our care. Jesus is speaking to us when he says, "Feed my lambs." He is speaking to all of us. So we all need to give some thought to how we might answer that call, how we might contribute to the well-being of the world's community. And then Jesus says, "Tend my sheep." Tend is a bigger word than feed, like I was telling the children. Every gardener knows that. It is easy to feed a garden. It is easy to throw out fertilizer and turn on the water spigot. But tending the garden is the hard part. Tending the garden means getting our hands dirty. Tending the garden means digging weeds, building a fence to keep out the deer and the rabbits. Tending the garden is hard work, in part because it requires the gardener to anticipate what the plants need and then to provide for it. Jesus says, "Tend my sheep." And I think it's important for us to ask what that might mean to each of us. Ask yourself what you can be doing to help other people. There are plenty of needy people in this world, in this town, in this congregation, in your neighborhoods. What does Jesus want you to do to help them? And finally, Jesus tells Peter, "Feed my sheep." Jesus himself provides the model here. He fed people bread and fish at the feeding of the 5,000. He gave them food for their bodies. He fed people bread and wine at the Last Supper. He gave them food for their souls. In other words, Jesus fed people to meet their physical needs, and he fed them to meet their spiritual needs. And Jesus calls us as well to do both. And so ask yourselves what he might want you to do, what he wants you to give away to feed your hungry brother or sister, to give them physical and spiritual bread. One night in New York on Broadway, the great star Mary Martin was preparing to go on stage as she had done 1,000 times before in Roger and Hammerstein's South Pacific. And just before she took the stage, a note was handed to her. And the note was signed by Oscar Hammerstein, who was that evening on his deathbed. And the note was short. It simply said, "Dear Mary, a bell's not a bell until you ring it. A song's not a song until you sing it. Love in your heart is not put there to stay. Love isn't love till you give it away." And when the play was over, the cast rushed her backstage and asked, "What happened? We've never heard you perform that way before." And Mary read to them Hammerstein's note and said, "Tonight I gave my love away." I can hear Jesus' words to Peter in that. "Peter, do you love me? Feed my sheep." Jesus was saying to Peter, "Peter, you know the song, sing it. Peter, you have the bell, ring it. Peter, love isn't love till you give it away." Love Jesus. Feed his sheep.